What if everything you believed about healing, about reality itself, was shattered in a forgotten alleyway? Imagine being a man who could buy anything except the one thing he truly craved: his son's ability to walk. Then, a voice from the shadows, a child living on the fringes, offers an impossible promise. Would you dismiss it as madness? Or would the faintest glimmer of hope compel you to follow into the unknown, risking everything on a whisper of a miracle? This is a story about desperation, inexplicable moments, and how sometimes the deepest healing happens where logic ends. If stories that explore the mysteries of the human heart and the thin veil between despair and hope resonate with you, make sure you subscribe and hit the notification bell. You won't want to miss where this journey leads. Now, let's step into the chilly streets of Philadelphia. Philadelphia in November. The crisp air carried the scent of damp leaves and the promise of a winter closing in. For most, just a change of seasons. For Arthur Sterling, it was the landscape of a grief that knew no end. He'd built an empire against the Philadelphia skyline, towers scraping the clouds, deals shaping the city. But all his influence, all his wealth, evaporated before the silence in that wheelchair. Arthur, a man in his 40s, clad in an expensive coat, but with a face etched by fatigue and worry, pushed the wheelchair along a brick sidewalk near Rittenhouse Square. The rhythmic click of the wheels was the only constant sound. In the chair, bundled in a Phillies blanket, was Ethan, his 10-year-old son. His blond hair was tousled, his blue eyes fixed on the cracks in the pavement, a resigned expression that didn't belong on such a young face. 18 months. 18 months since the snowy slopes of Colorado had stolen the movement from Ethan's legs. T6 fracture, spinal cord trauma. Permanent. The doctor's words echoed like a final verdict in Arthur's mind, each day a repetition of impotence. Hope, once his driving force, had become a slow poison. Arthur turned down a narrow alley, a shortcut he often took. It was quieter here, flanked by old brick walls and trash cans. A child's voice, soft yet clear, called out, "Mister?" He stopped, annoyed. He scanned the alley, expecting an adult panhandler. A small figure emerged from the shadows near a rusted service door. A girl, maybe 11, with dark skin and tightly coiled hair partially hidden by an oversized hoodie. Her deep brown eyes held an unusual weight, seeming much older than her years. She wore worn jeans and sneakers that had seen better days. "Mister, I know how to make your son walk again," the girl said. Arthur stared at her for a second. Disbelief warred with irritation on his face. He let out a short, bitter laugh. "Sure you do, kid. Have a nice day," he said dismissively. He resumed his path, pushing the chair harder, ignoring the girl's steady gaze on his back. Ethan glanced back for an instant, curious, before returning his focus to the ground. The absurd offer was discarded as quickly as it arose. Just another barb in the open wound of Arthur's reality. The next day, same time, same alley. The weather was grayer, a fine mist beginning to fall. The image of the girl lingered. Those serious eyes. Something about them bothered Arthur. He pushed Ethan's chair through the same alley. He hesitated for a moment before entering, glancing toward the spot where the girl had stood. She was there, leaning against the wall, watching them silently. Their eyes met. Arthur saw doubt reflected in her stillness. He quickened his pace, his heart beating a little faster, the mist dampening his shoulders. 3 days passed. 3 days of fruitless physical therapy, hopeless doctor's appointments, the crushing weight of routine. 3 days haunted by the figure of the girl in the alley. Again, he and Ethan were at the entrance to Lombard Lane. Arthur looked more haggard. He hesitated, considered a different route, but something pulled him forward. "Mister, please, listen to me." The girl's voice, Maya's, was firmer now. She stepped forward from the shadows, her posture straight, her gaze intense. "I know how to make your son walk again. For real." Arthur stopped, ready to brush her off with a harsh word. But before he could speak, Ethan's small voice cut in. "Dad, wait. What does she mean? Please, just hear her out." Arthur looked at his son. It was the first time in months Ethan had shown active interest in anything beyond his own misery. The plea was quiet, hesitant, but carried immense weight. Arthur looked from Ethan to Maya, to the gray street, to the despair consuming him. Logic screamed it was madness, but his son's pleading eyes and the last tattered thread of hope warred within him. He sighed heavily, exhaustion winning over disbelief. "Where?" he asked. "Follow me," Maya replied, with a slight nod. She turned and started walking down the alley, disappearing around the next corner. Arthur exchanged an uncertain look with Ethan, whose face now held a spark of something Arthur had almost forgotten: curiosity. He took a deep breath, the cold air burning his lungs. "If anything feels wrong, we leave immediately. Understand?" Arthur said quietly to Ethan. "Got it, Dad." Ethan nodded, his eyes fixed on the path Maya had taken. Arthur pushed the wheelchair, the sound of the wheels echoing differently now, no longer just resigned, but charged with an unknown tension. They followed the girl into the unfamiliar heart of the city. They left the contained elegance of Rittenhouse behind, plunging into the city's older veins. Streets where the cobblestones were uneven, and the buildings seemed to lean into each other, sharing secrets and the weight of time. The air smelled of damp brick, and the ghost of meals passed. Arthur maneuvered the wheelchair with difficulty over the rough pavement, dodging puddles and trash bags. Each turn increased his apprehension. Maya walked a few steps ahead, self-assured, never looking back. "What am I doing?" Arthur thought. "Following a street kid down dark alleys. Is this desperation or insanity? Maybe both." Maya stopped before a dark brick row house, squeezed between two others. The front door was worn, chipped paint revealing old wood. Dry ivy clung to part of the facade, and an upstairs window was boarded over. No visible doorbell. Maya simply pushed the door, which creaked open. "In here," she said. Arthur hesitated on the threshold. The interior was dim. Ethan leaned forward in his chair, trying to see. "Who lives here?" Arthur asked, his voice tense. "Someone who listens," Maya answered. Her simple, direct tone disarmed him for a moment. He looked at Ethan, who nodded encouragingly. Arthur pushed the chair inside. The hallway was narrow and smelled of dust and something else, a faint herbal scent, maybe chamomile or lemongrass, almost imperceptible beneath the smell of mildew. The only light came from an open door at the end of the hall. They entered a room at the back. The light was dim, filtered through a dirty window and a few cracks in the precarious ceiling. The furniture was sparse and old. A wobbly table, a few mismatched chairs. In the center, on a faded but clean rug, sat a woman in a low wooden chair. She looked to be in her 60s or 70s. Her gray hair was pulled back in a simple bun. Her fair skin was etched with fine lines, especially around her eyes, which were a startlingly piercing pale blue. She wore simple, clean, but worn clothes. She didn't smile, but her face radiated a profound calm. "I was wondering when you'd arrive," the woman said, her voice soft, slightly husky. Arthur stiffened. The casual comment, as if she'd been expecting them, unnerved him. How did you know?" The woman looked at him calmly. "I don't know the future, sir, but I recognize pain when it crosses my threshold, and I feel hope, even when it barely dares to breathe." She rose slowly and approached Ethan's chair. She knelt beside him, meeting his eyes. "Hello, Ethan. My name is Ilara," she said gently. "I'm just someone who likes to listen to what the body has to say, even when it's quiet." "May I?" She gestured toward his knees, not touching. Ethan looked at his father. Arthur was tense, his heart hammering against his ribs. Fear, skepticism, and a dangerous spark of hope battled within him. He swallowed hard and nodded slowly. Ilara placed her hands on Ethan's knees, over the blanket. Her hands were warm, her fingers slightly rough, but the touch was steady and incredibly gentle. Ilara closed her eyes. A low, soft hum escaped her lips. It wasn't a recognizable song, more a primal melody, strangely comforting. Ethan's eyes were wide. Suddenly, he gasped, a small tremor running through his body. I felt it. Dad, I felt something, he whispered, astonished. Arthur leaned forward, gripping the wheelchair's armrests. Felt what, son? What did you feel? Like warmth, a tingling. Here, Ethan replied, his eyes welling up, pointing to his thighs. It's been so long. Ilara opened her eyes, her calm gaze meeting Arthur's. The body remembers, Mr. Sterling. Even when the mind tries to forget to protect itself, the memory is there, in the nerves, the muscles. Sometimes it just needs an invitation to wake up. This isn't medicine, Arthur said, still skeptical but shaken. Not as you know it, Ilara agreed with a slight nod. Medicine fixes what's broken. But sometimes the break isn't just in the bone or the nerve. Sometimes it's in the bridge between wanting and being able. She turned to Ethan. Would you like to try, Ethan? Try to stand? Just feel the ground beneath your feet? Ethan swallowed hard, fear and desire warring on his face. He looked at his father, then at Ilara, and finally nodded with determination. Carefully, Ilara and Arthur helped Ethan move to the edge of the chair. His legs were thin, pale from disuse. When he tried to plant his feet on the floor, they trembled violently. His arms gripped Arthur's tightly. Arthur braced himself to catch him, but Ilara placed a gentle hand on his arm. Let him feel the effort. Let him command, she said softly. With a groan of exertion, Ethan pushed. His arms shook, sweat beaded on his forehead. His legs wobbled, threatening to buckle. Arthur held his breath. For an instant that stretched into eternity, Ethan was standing, unsteady, leaning heavily on Arthur, but standing. The weight of his body on his own legs for the first time in 18 months. His face was a mask of shock, pain from the effort, and utter amazement. He gasped. He tried to take a tiny step, a shuffle. The movement unbalanced him. His knees buckled. Ethan! Arthur cried out. He caught him before he fully fell, holding him tightly. Ethan clung to his father, his body trembling uncontrollably, sobs beginning to shake him. Not from pain, but from an overwhelming surge of emotion. Dad, I felt it. I felt my legs. I really did, he cried against Arthur's shoulder. Arthur held him close, his own face wet with silent tears. He looked over his son's head at Ilara, the question burning in his eyes, even if he couldn't voice it. Maya watched from a corner, quiet, her serious eyes reflecting the intensity of the moment. That fragile moment of standing. Is it the beginning of a miracle, or just a fleeting flicker? Before we continue Arthur and Ethan's journey and uncover more about Maya and Ilara, take a second to hit that subscribe button if you haven't already. Your support helps us bring more stories like this to light. The sound of Ethan's sobs filled the small room, a sound both heartbreaking and miraculous. Arthur held him, feeling the tremors in his son's body, the reality of the moment warring against 18 months of hopelessness. Finally, he managed to control his own emotions enough to speak. He looked at Ilara, his voice hoarse. I don't understand. The doctors, they said it was impossible. Permanent damage. How? Ilara stepped closer, her voice soft but firm. The doctors read the charts, the scans. They see the fracture, the trauma to the nerve. They don't measure the spirit, the deep connection between mind and body. Your son suffered a terrible trauma, not just physical, The body sometimes shuts down parts of itself to protect the whole. He stopped believing he could, and the body obeyed. But what did you do? The touch? The humming? Arthur asked. I just listened, Ilara replied. Listened to the silence beneath the injury, and invited it to remember. The humming? It's just a way to focus intention, to create a quiet space where fear doesn't scream so loudly. The real change came from him. She looked at Ethan, now breathing more calmly in his father's arms. Today, for the first time in a long time, he allowed the possibility. He trusted something beyond the diagnosis. Maya approached slowly. Someone who helped me, used to say that sometimes the body's just waiting for permission to heal. That fear is a locked door. Arthur looked at Maya, truly seeing her for the first time not as a street kid, but as someone with unexpected depth. Someone helped you? How did you? Maya glanced away for a moment, a flicker of pain in her eyes. I hurt my arm bad when I was little. Nobody thought I'd move it right again. This person, she sat with me every day, didn't make promises, just sat there, touched my arm gently, hummed low. One day, she said, try to move it if you want. And I did. It wasn't magic. It was patience, and believing when I couldn't anymore. The story's simplicity struck Arthur. No scientific explanations, but a resonance of human truth, of trauma, and the spark of resilience that defied cold logic. He helped Ethan back into the wheelchair. The boy was exhausted, but his eyes shone with a new light. I don't know how to thank you, Arthur said to Ilara and Maya, gratitude overflowing. What can I do for you? Money? A place to stay? Maya? School? Anything? Ilara smiled gently for the first time. Your gratitude is payment enough, Mr. Sterling. Seeing that spark in your son's eyes, that's everything. Maya shook her head gently. Thank you, sir. But my place is out here. There are lots of people nobody sees. People who need someone to sit beside them and hum low. It's what I know how to do. It's what I need to do. Arthur felt a pang in his chest. Her refusal wasn't pride, it was purpose. He wanted to insist, to protect her. But something in her quiet dignity stopped him. He didn't offer a card, didn't ask for a number. This moment, this place, seemed to exist outside normal rules. If you need anything, if I can help in any way, he said, struggling. We know. Thank you, Maya replied. The first step was taken, young man, Ilara said to Ethan. The road is yours now. Be patient with yourself. Arthur nodded, still stunned. He pushed Ethan's chair out of the room, back down the dark hallway, and onto the gray Philadelphia street. Ethan was quiet on the way back, but Arthur saw him touch his own legs occasionally, as if confirming a newly discovered memory. The following weeks were a blur of intensive therapy and small, monumental victories. Doctors scratched their heads, spoke of atypical spontaneous neurological recovery, complex psychosomatic factors. None could explain the trigger. Arthur watched Ethan struggle to cross the living room on crutches. The boy stumbled, nearly fell, but caught himself, face flushed with effort and stubbornness. A small smile touched Arthur's lips. He stopped trying to explain. He just watched, supported, and felt a gratitude so profound it ached. And in the back of his mind, the image of Maya and Ilara persisted. Their calm, their quiet certainty. He needed to find them, needed to understand, needed, somehow, to give back. It wasn't just about Ethan anymore. Something had shifted within him, too, a crack appearing in the cynical armor he hadn't realized he wore so heavily. Arthur grabbed his coat, determined. He would go back to that street, to that house. Gratitude was a driving force, but something else pulled Arthur back to that forgotten street, the need to anchor the experience in reality. Ethan's recovery was tangible, an earthly miracle unfolding before his eyes. But the origin, the origin felt like a fever dream. Arthur drove through Philadelphia, his face tense with anticipation and uncertainty. The weather was colder now, perhaps the first snowflakes in the air. He retraced the path he'd taken with Maya weeks before. He parked a few blocks away and walked, his heart pounding. He recognized the corner, the narrow alley near Lombard Street where he first met Maya. He searched for her there. The alley was empty, save for trash cans and faded graffiti. He approached a hot dog vendor on the corner, a familiar face. "Excuse me, have you happened to see a young girl around here? Maybe 11, black girl, very serious eyes? Used to hang around this alley?" Arthur asked. The vendor wiped his hands on his apron, thinking. "A girl? Nah, Mr. Sterling. See you and your boy pass sometimes. Before... Glad to see the kid doing better. But a girl here? Don't recall one. This alley's kinda dead. Nobody sticks around." Arthur frowned. Strange. He thanked the vendor and walked on, the first seed of doubt planted. He asked a doorman, a shopkeeper. The answers were the same. They remembered him vaguely, but no one recalled a girl like Maya frequenting the area. It was as if she had existed only for him. He felt a chill despite his coat. He decided to go to the house. He retraced the winding route through South Philly, memory guiding his steps. He found the street, recognized the row of brick houses. But as he approached the number he was sure was right, he stopped abruptly. The house looked different. The worn door Maya had pushed open was there, but it seemed older, more neglected. The ivy was thicker, the boarded-up window, and now a yellowed, time-ripped, condemned sign was tacked crookedly to the door. Can't be. We were here just weeks ago, he thought. He approached hesitantly, pushed the door. It didn't creak. It was stuck. He forced it slightly, and it gave way with the crack of rotten wood. He stepped inside. The hallway was dark, but the smell was different. No longer dust and herbs, but the acrid odor of abandonment, dampness. The door at the end of the hall was ajar. He walked toward it, heart in his throat, pushed it open. The room was empty. Faint afternoon light filtered through the grimy window, illuminating a desolate space. Rotting floorboards, plaster crumbling from the walls. No rug, no table, no chairs, just debris, thick dust, and the oppressive feeling of long neglect. No trace of Alara, of Maya, of the calm of that encounter. Confusion, shock, a sense of unreality washed over Arthur. "But we were here, Ethan." He stood. "Right here," he whispered. He ran a hand over the rough wall, as if touch could retrieve the memory, the proof. But there was nothing, only cold stone and decay. It was as if the place he'd visited had dissolved, or perhaps never existed as he remembered. He backed out of the house slowly, pulling the door shut, stood on the sidewalk for a long moment, staring at the quiet street, the condemned sign. Fine snow began to fall more heavily, blanketing the street, muffling the sounds. He never searched for Maya or Alara again. He realized, perhaps, he wasn't meant to. Some doors open for an instant, then close forever. Months later, spring in Philadelphia. Arthur and Ethan walked through a verdant Rittenhouse Square. Ethan still had a slight limp, maybe used a thin cane for confidence, but he was walking. He laughed at something Arthur said. There was a lightness about them both that hadn't existed before. Ethan continued to improve. Medical science documented his progress, but never explained the turning point. For Arthur, the mystery remained. Who was Maya? Who was Alara? What truly happened in that dim room? Arthur paused, watching Ethan walk a few steps ahead. A faint smile touched his lips. He didn't have the answers, but he had his son back, and he had a new understanding of value. Not the steel and concrete he traded, but human connection, unexpected hope found in a dark alley, the power of simply listening. The encounter hadn't just started Ethan's physical healing. It had cracked open Arthur's own hardened, cynical heart, letting light into places he hadn't known were dark. They had become a luminous question mark in his life, a reminder that not everything real can be explained. And sometimes the greatest gifts come wrapped in mystery, like a whisper on the cold Philadelphia wind. The true miracle wasn't only Ethan walking, but Arthur learning to see beyond what he could touch and prove. Arthur caught up to Ethan, placing a hand on his shoulder. They continued walking together under the spring sun, leaving the camera behind, which focused for an instant on a shadowy, empty alley nearby. This story reminds us that healing can come from the most unexpected places, often defying neat explanations. It speaks to the power of belief, presence, and human connection in moments of deep despair. Both Ethan's steps and Arthur's softened heart are testaments to a mystery that lingered long after Maya and Alara vanished. Sometimes, the most profound transformations occur not when we find all the answers, but when we learn to embrace the questions and accept the gifts offered by the inexplicable. If this story touched you, please consider subscribing and sharing it with others who appreciate tales of hope and the enduring strength of the human spirit. Thank you for watching.